Join our celebration of Black History Month. Only on New Thought Media Network. New videos every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. 28 unique Black History moments. Every day in February. Only on New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series, January 31st through April 4th. Embrace nonviolence every day with our 64 unique video meditations. Join us at 6 a.m. Mountain Time or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. Featuring a collection of New Thought voices, the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series. Only on New Thought Media Network. January 31st through April 4th.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, and you are here with me to talk about inclusive churches. The inclusive church, what does that mean? How can leaders be more inclusive? How can leaders create a culture or an environment in their spiritual community where inclusion is valued and it is the way things get done? All of that. If by chance this is your very first time seeing the inclusive church, then I do want to just give you 3 very quick things. 1, you can find out more about inclusive churches and what it means to be inclusive by visiting stainedglassspirit.net. I'm the author of a book titled Stained Glass Spirit: Becoming a Community, a Spiritual Community Where Oneness Does Not Require Sameness. Number 2, when I say inclusive church, I am talking about the people, the community, the congregation, not a piece of property. I'm reclaiming the word church to the meaning of the people who form the community, not the building. And number 3, if you hear me say the word leader or leaders, I am not only talking about ministers, I'm talking about all the people that make the church happen and make the church grow and make the church meaningful. So whether they are licensed, ordained, or a volunteer, or a board member, or a team leader, everyone who contributes to, in a leadership way, to the church being successful. Now, that's out of the way. What are we going to talk about today? So the title for today is Unintentionally Unwelcome. And if you've been engaged with Stained Glass Spirit at all for more than a year or 2, then you have heard me talk about this topic before. All the ways that we are unintentionally unwelcome or that it makes it look like what we say about inclusion is just lip service. And there are a couple of reasons why I'm bringing this topic up again today. As is often the case when I'm preparing for the show, something has happened in the last few days or within the last week that has made me think about that topic or recommit to sharing that topic. And today is an example of that. Had a really great conversation with a small group of people a few days ago, and several of the people said all the right things, right? And as the conversation went on, it seemed obvious to me, but not to everyone, that there was a gap between the words being shared and the behavior being exhibited. So it reminded me that in the Stained Glass Spirit book, there is actually a chapter called Unintentionally Unwelcome. And so I'm going to share some examples from the book, and I'm going to invite you to think of your own examples and feel free to share. You can just say hello in the chat as Anita has done. Hey. Or you can put examples in the chat or comments, and I will see them as well. So, unintentionally unwelcome. In the book, this chapter is in a section that is titled Multicultural is Sometimes Messy, because we don't always know what we don't know. And we often do have intentions that are honorable, but we don't realize our behavior is sending a different answer, a different message. And we also it's sometimes messy because we do our best and we still offend someone, again, because we don't know. It's not intentional. And so when we are believing that we are, and we're committed to being inclusive, we can often pick up the right language and be blind to the ways our behavior conflicts or contradicts the words that we're saying. I don't know why my throat is not clear. Let's see if some pineapple juice helps that. So in the chapter in the book on unintentionally unwelcome, the first two very short paragraphs summarize what I just said. Even when committed to being inclusive, there are some common but unnecessary mistakes church leaders often make. Often our words and our actions are not quite in alignment. We mean well, but our behavior reveals a conflicting message. And then I share 4 common comments or statements that people use to explain why they're committed to inclusion in their spiritual communities. They'll tell me things like, quote, everybody here loves each other. We don't need to talk about diversity because we love each other. Number 2, we're very welcoming here. We're open to all kinds of people joining our center, our church, our community. Number 3, we're ready to grow, and having more diversity will be a big part of our future success. Yay, team. Number 4, diversity is important to us. It's one of our values. Okay, so I'm going to share a few comments about each of those sentences and why they might be good and why they might be not so helpful for you. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes on some other things for you to think about and things you might do to close the gap between intention and actual execution. So everybody here loves diversity or loves each other. So we don't need to talk about diversity. And as I say in the book, the first issue here is that loving each other really doesn't have anything to do with talking about diversity. And so that always makes me ask people, so what do you mean by that? Or how do you demonstrate you love each other? Or how will I know you love me just because you love each other and I'm new here, right? And so then the second part of that, we don't need to talk about diversity, means that there's an assumption that talking about diversity would be bad or would be a labor or would be uncomfortable or would be too emotional, or it might get in the way of us loving each other. And the reality is that whether you talk about diversity or not, you are experiencing, or people in your community are experiencing diversity. So the other time I hear this comment a lot is that what people really should say is, we don't need to talk about race. Because often when people are saying this, they're saying, oh, we don't need to talk about race or racism. That's uncomfortable. That's tricky. That's sticky. That's challenging. And we all get along, so we don't need to talk about that. So when you realize what you're doing is you're saying any conversation about diversity is about something that's hard, that's difficult, that's touchy, rather than think about all the ways that you could be talking about all kinds of diversity in a positive light and in the context of your spiritual teachings. And so that will present an environment where someone new or someone who's been with you for a very long time begins to recognize and appreciate that everybody is not the same as everyone else. And all of us must be aware of that and be willing to pay attention to how I might need to adjust my communication, or I might need to check the assumptions that I am making because, oh, everybody isn't just like me, even though I may have known them for 8 years. They're not like me, and there could be something I'm doing or saying that is harming our relationship or making them feel unwelcome or the need to hide what is unique about themselves. Number two, oh, we're very welcoming. We're open to all kinds of people joining our center. On the surface, that is beautiful. And I've never had anyone say that to me who didn't mean it. However, what typically happens is people, especially that second part, we're welcome. Anybody can join our center. The unspoken part of that often is as long as they just fit into the way we already do things. I'm taking a breath because we forget that the more different kinds of people we invite in, we welcome in, the more we must be willing to make some adjustments. Because if I want it to be their community too, not just my community, like come on over to my yard and play in my yard with my toys the way that I know the rules, right? Follow my rules. That's okay. You're welcome to come, but you are not welcome to ask me to adjust. how we communicate, what we do, what music we play, who our guest artists are, or our guest speakers are, because I want to still feel comfortable, and adjusting to something that gives you comfort or enjoyment doesn't make me comfortable. So if somebody's got to be uncomfortable, it's got to be you, because I'm already here. This community is already here. So there's a red flag that goes up when that's the framework for convincing someone that you really are inclusive or intend to be inclusive. Number 3, we're ready to grow. And, we've looked at all the demographics, and, diversity is a big part of our future success. Now, I love this intention. And I would say in the last 10 years, almost always, I hear this intention, not in the context of race, but in the context of age. Sometimes in the context of people with disabilities, and occasionally in the context of sexual orientation and gender identity. But I would say 85% of the time when I hear this one, it's in the context of age. We have an older or aging population, and if we are going to grow, we need to bring in people who are between the ages of 30 and 50, or 35 and 50, because the majority of our members are between the ages of 60 and 80. And it's so interesting that it's important, right? It's important because we want to grow. And we realize we're not going to grow if we only are attracting more people who are in their 70s. So it's good that there is a recognition of and a desire to grow, and a recognition that a younger demographic will do that. And the challenge with that is people often, not always, but often talk about that different demographic as they're just going to show up. And again, we have something solid here, and they just need to come in and adjust to the way that we have. If we can just convince them how great it is to have a Sunday service, and the Sunday service includes these 4 elements or these certain people. And the challenge with that is the demographic you're targeting isn't coming now, because that's not what they're looking for. So we have to be really aware, not that we throw everything out, but that we build something different, and that we build it with the target demographic participating in the conversation. So that means, you've got to find some people who are in the target demographic, and whether they're on your staff or on your volunteer team or not, how do you get the input from people who are in the group that you are targeting? Number 4, diversity is important to us. It's one of our values. So let's start with the problem with this statement. The biggest problem with this statement is that diversity can't be a value. Inclusion, being inclusive, could be a value. Your values are almost always things that you achieve through behavior. Think about it. Honesty, integrity, respect, right? These are common values, human values. Diversity is just is, right? Go grab 10 random people in a shopping mall and you have diversity, because each of the 10 people is different from one another. There's nothing that you can do in your behavior to demonstrate diversity. Now, you can demonstrate that you value diversity in lots of ways. You can demonstrate that you value creating an inclusive environment, so you value inclusive behaviors. But there's no diversity behavior, right? The creator of all of life has created many different kinds of people. The diversity simply exists. What you do with that diversity either makes or breaks an environment. I always have to start there, because when people say diversity is one of our values, I either have to take a deep breath and decide not to get into that conversation right now and give them the benefit of the doubt, or I have to kind of do a sidebar with them to talk about, well, what does that really mean? And what is it that you actually are valuing, and what are your values? So I like to start there, but with this one, diversity is important to us. It's one of our values. So I ask people more about that, and in the book, I highlight a few things that that make me smile in this moment. Diversity is important to us because we want to heal the racism in the world. Healing racism is a valuable and important mission. Just be sure you understand that racism itself does not encompass all of diversity, and that in healing the consciousness that allows for racism, it includes you. Like, you're not here to simply save the rest of the world. You also have to change with the change that you are prescribing or working toward in the world. And then finally, related to this one, diversity is important to us. It's one of our values. I'd much rather you be thinking about and saying things like this. So actually, yeah, let's segue to what might you think about instead that would capture what it is you're trying to do to be inclusive. So some of the examples that are in the book are a response like, diversity is important to us because our mission as a spiritual community is to help all humanity experience their spiritual magnificence, not just the people who look like, act like, think like I do. So anything that ties it back to your primary spiritual teaching or the foundation of your spiritual teaching is much better than what sounds like something you read in a magazine or saw on a social media meme and picked up. Another example is diversity is important to us because the Creator made people of all kinds, and we want to worship with all God's people. Again, you're creating an environment that is grounded in your spiritual mission, and you are linking it to behavior. So the why has to be with the spiritual mission, and the how, in that case, we're going to worship together. We're going to worship with every face of God. And, you might modify that to everyone who shares an interest in or a commitment to our new thought treatment or our new thought philosophy, right? Another example that is a better phrasing for a spiritual community that you can back up in word and action is diversity is important to us because every one of us grows when we meet and build relationships with people who have different experiences than our own. Like, wow. We're all about personal growth and spiritual growth, and some of our greatest growth comes from meeting, understanding, and building relationship with people who are different from us and bring a different perspective or a different experience. And the fourth example that's in the book is diversity is important to us because we realize when we study, practice, and worship with people who are different from us, we actually get to see and understand more ways that God expresses in the world. Now, some of you have been in situations where people said, we don't want to talk about diversity and we don't want to talk about inclusion at church. Like, we want you to leave the politics outside. I come here to get away from all of that. These four examples are examples of the whys that are not related to the political polarity in the world. They are completely grounded in the depth of the spiritual teaching that you have committed to teach and practice. And you also are beginning to prepare people better to leave whatever activity or program or class that you are hosting in your spiritual community and go back, to go out into this multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-generational world we all live in, and have a better chance of building relationship and building community because they're understanding that being inclusive is a demonstration of their faith, a demonstration of their spiritual belief system, a demonstration of their spiritual teachings. And that's why you want to not only talk about diversity, but you want to build it in to how you operate. So the focus is on being unintentionally unwelcome, right? And so for the last 4 or 5 minutes, I really do want to hone in on how, first, what you say about why you are paying attention to inclusion makes a big difference. And then when you're able to hold people accountable for integrating that why into the way they greet people, into the events that they plan, into the examples they use if they're teaching a class, into the way you run your board meeting or your leadership or your staff meetings. When those behaviors in all of those different settings change, then you actually are being intentionally inclusive. So, recap. Be careful about the general ways that you describe your why. Why are you paying attention to inclusion? Make sure that it's grounded in your spiritual teachings. And then when you are working with each individual team, bring that forward and really ask, so how do we translate that into what this team does or what this class is about. At the end of this chapter in the book, I give 4 examples of what leaders in stained glass spirit communities might be keeping in mind. Leaders in stained glass spiritual communities talk about diversity as a way for oneness to be demonstrated, because recognizing diversity is our opportunity to see each person as another face of God and as a member of our spiritual and human family to be loved and respected. A leader in a stained glass spirit community challenges themselves and other leaders to demonstrate welcoming behaviors based on the cultural needs of the guest, not the cultural preferences of the existing norm. Number 3, leaders in stained glass spirit communities explore the benefits of diversity and the value of inclusion in the context of both individual and community growth. And number 4, leaders in stained glass spiritual communities ensure that diversity and inclusion are not just words on paper, but are also demonstrated in the activities and the relationships in all aspects of the ministry. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm the author of Stained Glass Spirit. I'm the host of Inclusive Church. And I just want to encourage you to do more than lip service. Be really aware of how you are welcoming people and what you are saying about your commitment to inclusion, because I don't want you to be the community that is unintentionally unwelcome. Please join me again next Tuesday right here on the New Thought Media Network at noon Mountain Time.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.